Good evening, everyone. My name is Letitia Bland, and I just want to give you a short video on aging as it pertains to a very special person in my life, utilizing 3 of the 8 stages of Erikson's psychosocial theory of development and a few others sprinkled in there. I want to also preface this that I am a little bit under the weather, so I apologize if my voice goes in and out. I will try to keep it as steady as possible. All right, so let's get started. I want to present to you Mr. James Sheffield, who is a man of very few words, but has a whole lot of love. Mr. Sheffield is a 68-year-old African-American man, or male, identifies as male, and he's my father-in-law. His family and I describe him as a rather stoic individual. He is a retired Bridgeport police officer of 31 years, as well as a United States Army veteran who served in Vietnam. He currently lives in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he loves to fish and maintain his garden. Throughout this video, I will reference Mr. Sheffield's life through the stages of intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation, and his current stage, integrity versus despair. Mr. Sheffield's parents and siblings are from Guyton, Georgia, which is also where he was born. The area in which he was born was plagued by racist Jim Crow laws that were enforced in the southern parts of the United States that bred aggressive and sometimes violent interactions between the races. This explains why he was born at home, because of hospital care in that time and in that area was subpar to that of European American counterparts. And so for that reason, it kind of shaped how Mr. Sheffield viewed himself and viewed the world around him. So despite some of those keen disadvantages, Mr. Sheffield's family was considered lower middle class, and his father owned the land they lived on, which is kind of rare for that time period. His family actually still owns that land today. Mr. Sheffield was drafted into the United States Army shortly after graduating high school and served as an infantry specialist while he was serving. After serving 8 years in the Army and going to Vietnam twice and kind of all over Asia doing his Army thing, he separated from the military and then moved to Bridgeport. This is where, after a few jobs, he joined the local police force. So let's get into Erikson's theory. Erikson defines this stage, this young adult stage, with intimate connections with people outside of the family structure where one learns responsibility for others. During this time on the police force, Mr. Sheffield became a bit of a ladies' man. He had numerous girlfriends and social interactions, and of course friends that he made along the way as well. So I don't think intimacy was a problem for him. I believe that in Erikson's definition, he definitely resolved that particular stage so that he could successfully move on to the next. After a few years of dating and being on the police force, he met Miss Melody Thurgood, who was a new police recruit in Connecticut, and of course became my mother-in-law. While they were together, they had 2 children, in addition to Miss Thurgood's child she had from a previous relationship several years before they got together. Mr. Sheffield always claimed this daughter, Nicole, kind of as his own, even though she was not his biological child. And in that time frame, she actually joined the Army in his footsteps and has a family of her own, has 3 children and 1 grandchild. So he's, a great grandparent. And he also has a daughter, Olivia, who is my wife, and his youngest son, Isaiah, who's unmarried and living in New York. So moving on to the next phase, I want to discuss generativity versus stagnation, defined by Erikson as finding your life's work and contributing to the development of others through raising children and procreation overall. During this stage, middle-aged adults begin contributing to the next generation, often through childbirth. Those who do not master this task may experience stagnation and feel as though they're not leaving a mark on the world in a meaningful way. They may have little connection with others and little interest in productivity and self improvement. This is a stage where I would say people are kind of stuck in their ways and they don't really want to change what they think has been working their entire lives. And, they keep going with that theme in their life. Because Mr. Sheffield knew his grandparents and his great grandparents in the South, back then women had children a lot younger. They weren't necessarily pursuing careers as much as they were being homemakers and taking care of not only the family, but really the community. So he knew, great grandparents, great aunts, so on and so forth. And for this reason, he has a desire to have biological grandchildren of his own and kind of offer them the same experience that he was afforded. And so I think that plays a huge role in why he reminds us that he wants grandchildren. He tends to look back on his life fairly fondly. He seems satisfied with the enterprise that he's built with his career, his past career, his peers, and his family, and with himself. One would argue that even through his occupation as a police officer, Ms. Sheffield, he successfully committed to some intimate relationships, not only with his intimate partner, Ms. Thurgood, but also building these kind of lasting, loving connections and community with the Bridgeport community and with his, kind of brothers in arms outside of the Army. And he can see his legacy in his children, but I know he also desires to see his children procreate. And definitely being his daughter-in-law, I hear that a lot. So generativity kind of explains why many adults in this stage are looking to bear witness to the next generation because they want to see the fruits of their labor. Despite ever-increasing birth rates, which is a whole nother video, that, people are having less children or deciding not to have children at all can, play a big part in someone else's generativity based on, them being born in more of the baby boomer age and, being more of a millennial centennial that doesn't want to do that. But yeah, this is their way of kind of, looking at their fruits. Another theory I think is kind of relevant in this particular stage is called Young's theory of finding balance in introversion. So as I stated earlier, Mr. Sheffield is introverted. He's a man of few words. So I'd almost consider him a recluse in certain aspects. And over the course of his life, I think he's kind of used his supply of extroversion to establish his family. And now he's enjoying, his reclusivity and his introversion. So finally, there's a stage of finally, there's in the final stage of psychosocial development, there is integrity versus despair. Erikson said that people in late adulthood reflect on their lives and feel either a sense of satisfaction or a sense of failure. People who feel proud of their accomplishments feel a sense of integrity, and they can look back on their lives with fewer regrets. However, people who are not successful at this stage may feel as though their life has been wasted. They focus on what would have, should have, and could have been. They face the ends of their lives with feelings of bitterness, depression, and despair. Mr. Sheffield says, I have successful children. 2 of them are college graduates. One has their master's, one's pursuing it. He says he got more than what he could have asked for. And he says, in his own way, my life has been my life. As he becomes more introspective about his life lived, he resolves his regrets by getting closer to those he feels he didn't make the investment in. He makes opportunities to visit his children more and more and makes efforts to communicate more despite being the man of few words. I think his late in life emotional well-being is high functioning. Despite a few health concerns, he's mastering relationships and he is really just watching his family flourish. To me, this balance conveys wisdom, wholeness, and acceptance of his life, where he can look back on his life and see that balance. And this is truly the actualization of Erikson's 8th stage of development. So I want to say thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this quick video. Have a great night. Take care.